welcome to Studio RC. My name is Max, and I am an alcoholic. I want to welcome you today. We're beginning a brand new series. Start looking at the 12 traditions of AA. Now, at Recovery Church, we have our values. We have our 12 values. But one of the things we do is we definitely believe in the 12 steps, and the 12 traditions we use as a guide. Whereas in the AA fellowship specifically, that's kind of what guides their meetings and the business end, and the thought, or one of the joke is the steps keep us from committing suicide, and the traditions keep us from committing homicide. Now, I don't know if that might be taking it too far, but there are a lot of great principles in the 12 traditions. So we're going to take a look each week at a different tradition. And this will be the same intro each time. And because there are 12 traditions, it comes out of the 12 and 12 book, what we're going to do is we're going to take 12 minutes for each tradition and see how much we cover and what we can figure out about that. Now, one of the things I know, sometimes traditions, they're not the sexiest thing going. Sometimes when people find, if you go to a meeting and it's a tradition meeting, you're like, oh, it's a tradition meeting. I think that sometimes the more you get into them and the more you understand them, there are so many transferable principles, not only for the group, but for the individual as well. And so we're going to take a look at that and just see how that guides us, and also how that impacts us at Recovery Church, and how those traditions, how they kind of live themselves out in our context. But so we'll take this opportunity. We're going to look at each one, a different one each week. And so let's jump in right now. Thanks so much, and come on this journey as we take a look at AA's 12 traditions. Let's jump right into tradition number 2, and that is, for our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God, as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. So before we jump into the tradition, let's put 12 minutes on the clock, and away we go. So the second tradition has some application for Recovery Church, but they don't play out exactly the same as it does in the rooms. In the rooms, the group conscience is the members, but for the group's purpose, there's one ultimate authority, a loving God. And I think for Recovery Church, that absolutely, God is our guide. And we attempt to follow Jesus and do whatever we can to come alongside what Jesus is doing in and through Recovery Church. And so that's the same. God does not always express himself in our group conscience, because we have a lot of different leadership structures in Recovery Church. And I'll touch on that in just a second. But in regards to AA, the group conscience helps keep things in line. Let's say, a newly elected secretary is like, you know what, I'm going to really show this group some leadership now. And there's only one way to do it, and I'll tell you the way it is. And furthermore, we're going to take our money and establish a fund, and I'll manage it. And the group conscience sort of is the one that sort of says, all right, down there, settle down. Let's start working the program and working together. In AA and NA, members are chosen to serve in a lot of different ways. Sometimes they're voluntold, but usually at a business meeting, people kind of vote on people. But regardless of how people get their position, they must always remember that they serve for the good of all without authority over any. And that theme of service absolutely plays out in Recovery Church as well. This tradition is about leadership, or what does leadership look like? It's funny because Bill W., one of the founders in AA, said that AA is both a democracy and a benign anarchy. um, and so there's, it's not always clear who the figurehead is in the rooms. And most of the slates in the rooms rotate in and out of office every 6 months, every year, depending on the group. And new officers are elected. Some things are monthly, like chairing a meeting or those kind of things. And so the question, and this is an important question both for the rooms of recovery as well as Recovery Church, but who's in charge around here? In the recovery rooms, both in the recovery rooms and in Recovery Church, both are a spiritual movement. They just are. And so the ultimate authority for both is a loving God. And for in recovery rooms in AA, that loving God is expressed through the group conscience, where the group members come together, they express what they feel God would want their group to do. It's a voice is heard. God's voice is heard when a well-informed group gathers to arrive at its decision. And what's very interesting in the rooms of recovery, minority ideas get thoughtful attention. They're brought up and they're also listened to. It's not just that they're dismissed, but they're given the chance to share why they think maybe their idea is a little different or better. And in the same way, when you first enter into the rooms of AA or NA, that presence as a newcomer that we felt is the same presence as the group conscience. That it's real, it's welcoming us in, it's setting up so that there are no barriers for us to achieve recovery. And I love that picture. The difference in Recovery Church, we have different structures for Recovery Church in regards to whether you have a group conscience or not. I'm sure many groups have business meetings, they have leadership teams, and depending on how you're set up, some recovery churches, again, because we're not AA or NA, we may have a pastor who oversees what's going on. But even as a pastor, they're a trusted servant, and the ultimate authority is God. But a pastor may be, seminarily trained. We may have leaders or pastors that come from our Recovery Church Institute, which is trained through Recovery Church. We may have a structure where it's Recovery Church is under the umbrella of a church, and the lead pastor of that church is over the Recovery Church. Or you can have a Recovery Church that's led by people who are vocationally not in ministry, but have a heart for people in recovery, or in recovery themselves, and also a person of faith. And so we call that person the person of peace that could lead that campus. So there's a lot of different ways that looks. We believe in the spirit of rotation within our groups, and I think that leadership, it looks a little different in Recovery Church than it does in AA, but they parallel each other for sure. Some of the things to be thinking about is, do I criticize or do I trust and support my leaders? Those people who are leading us, and even if it's a position that rotates, am I criticizing or trusting? Here's a good personal question: Do we look to take credit for our own position or job? Like, are we getting value out of it? Are we getting, trying to get our worth out of that, or are we serving? And let's see, if you've been sober for a while, are you willing to serve and take your turn at any of the AA chores, or or in recovery, or any of the things. Is anything quote beneath you? Oh, I'll do a testimonial, but I won't help with the offering, or I won't set up the chairs, or those are all the things that need to take place. Are we willing to do? Again, that spirit of humility. Another thing that we addicts and alcoholics sometimes like to do, like if we're having a discussion about something in either venue, do we sound off about matters that maybe we don't have any experience or little knowledge of, but we want to be heard? We want to say our position and make sure that our voice is heard, even if we don't have a lot of knowledge in that. And that's a tricky one, and that sets us up a little bit. In regards to the ultimate authority, the sole authority in AA and Recovery Church is a loving God. I love that that's what we aim toward, what we desire to have. And in regards to the rooms, our understanding is that God expresses himself through the group conscience. And for Recovery Church, it is our understanding and belief that God expresses himself through the team, or whatever structure that you have that helps to lead your campus, that a loving God is expressing themselves through that team and those people. I'm looking a little at the tradition right now. Sometimes there are friends within our recovery and in our faith that are sometimes wiser and more humble than maybe we have had. And so, not that our ideas are invalid, but we want to make sure that we're hearing from God, that we're sharing from God. One of the things, the distinction that they make in the rooms, is an elder statesman versus a bleeding deacon. And I love the distinctions between the two. And maybe you've heard those terms before, but an elder statesman is the one who sees the wisdom of the group's decision, who holds no resentment over their reduced status, whose judgment, fortified by considerable experience, is sound, and who is willing to sit quietly on the sideline, patiently awaiting development. And then you have the bleeding deacon, and they're the one who is just as surely convinced that the group cannot get along without them, who constantly connives for re-election to a position, who continues to be consumed with self-pity. Thankfully, many of our bleeding deacons, if they stay sober long enough, will eventually become an elder statement, finger crossed. And the elder statesmen really become the real and permanent leadership, whether in the rooms or as well as in Recovery Church. It's their quiet opinions, their sure knowledge, and humble example that often help resolve a crisis, because they lead by example. An elder statesman is someone who is mature in their recovery, and a bleeding deacon is someone who is not. It again comes back to that sort of ego and selfishness versus the good of the group and the common welfare. And so we strive to be elder statesmen and not bleeding deacons. One of the things that we want to do in regards to having a loving God as our authority is make sure that we are praying about the positions that we may take on and the service responsibilities that we're doing. And, how can we come alongside of what Jesus is doing and join him? And this is a little 11th step as well. We pray for the knowledge of God's will and the power to carry it out. In other words, God, where are you at work? because I want to join you and make sure I have the tools to do that. And this is, as we serve our groups, that's a very important one. And we honor leadership as we rotate that leadership, and as we hopefully have humble servant leaders, and that we have a group filled with elder statesmen as well as newcomers, and that really helps us. So we're at the 12-minute mark. I just want to just summarize the second tradition. For our group purpose, one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. A simplified explanation of this tradition is the ultimate authority is a loving God, and it's as understood through group discussions and decisions. Leaders serve the group rather than control it, and I think that universally is true. Now, a biblical concept that we can attach to this is where there's no guidance. It tells us in Proverbs 11:14, a people falls, but in an abundance of counselors there is safety. In other words, if you just have one voice, one person doing it all, there's a greater chance of falling short or failing. But in the abundance of counsel, where you hear the voices and you weigh the voices, and again, you pray about the voices, there is safety. And so my hope is that you are able to experience that kind of leadership. And finally, a spiritual concept to consider is shared spiritual guidance as well as collective decision-making ensure that no single person holds too much power, fostering a supportive and democratic environment. Again, this doesn't always look exactly the same in Recovery Church as it does in AA or NA and some of our other 12-step programs, but there is no doubt that if someone holds too much power, that can go in the wrong direction. So our hope is that we have a collective spirit where all voices are heard. So tradition 2. Again, much like last time, if you have some thoughts or comments, by all means, we want to hear them on tradition 2. Leave them in the comment section. We do encourage you to like the video, follow the video, share the video, maybe even share the discussion so that we can get a good discussion going. So we thank you for coming to Studio RC. And remember, Recovery Church, there's 12 steps and one goal. God bless, and we'll see you next time.